Hi, I'm Brian. I work on a lot of Subarus. I had a question from Rob Murdoch. He's having problems with a 96 Subaru Legacy, and the trouble that he's having is that it's overheating. I think he just did a service, whether it was timing belt or head gasket, I don't remember for sure. But I know your frustration, Rob. I've been there, done that. Sometimes what happens with these Subarus is you have trouble getting the air to bleed out of the system. The best way to do it, I've found, is to use one of these spill-free funnels. I just call it a radiator bucket because it's a bucket that attaches to the radiator. It's got a hole in the bottom, and what you do is you run the vehicle. I just did the timing belt and water pump on this. It's a 2008, and their design's different, so you don't have to do this on the new ones. I don't want to create any confusion that way. It's usually about 95 around there up to 2004. 2003 was a real bad year for it. So let's go ahead and start this up. So what you do is you just babysit, but you see it'll just burp a little bit here and there. You gotta be careful. You got a bunch of fans and belts and everything. I can't condone this. Don't try this at home. But if you're a stunt man, you can squeeze the radiator hose and get it to burp a little bit if there's something close to coming out. So you get a little bit more. But basically you just let it run like that, and because the level of the coolant in the system has gone so high, air tends to want to get to this point. But this just seems to work. You can see that this is working. It's bubbling a bunch of the stuff out. Nice thing about the kit that I have, the Lyle 1 22150, I'll put a link in the description for it. So it's got a little plunger. I'm sure the Matco one does too. But once it's done, and you're a stunt man, don't try this at home. Pinch the hose, put a little thing in it, and then pull it off, and then it'll give you a couple of seconds where it's going to be low enough to where you can put your cap back on like that. So that's the first thing you do. If that doesn't work, then you may have a head gasket issue on your hands, and I'll show you how to address that. This is a water pump from a 2008 2.5 single overhead cam. Thermostats here, instead of being in the bottom, that's a little bit of a correction. Ones that are mounted in the bottom, sometimes you can have a really hard time getting them to purge. You can't see the spring on this one because it's oriented this way. This way the air goes up to the water pump, it kicks it around, breaks it up, gets it through. And you can see this is mounted very specifically with the little air bubbler at the top. So at the highest point the air can pass through. Now how about the older ones that are designed such that you have a thermostat that's mounted in the bottom? Well, if this is switched around and mounted in the bottom like this, then air gets trapped right where the spring is, right where that bimetal spring is. Now I've shown in other videos where I have a thermostat and I heat it up. When you heat these things up, for example with hot antifreeze is how they're normally heated up, that bimetal spring will compress and get down. You can see how it's squishing up together. I mean, it's burning a lot of rubber too, but you can see how the coils are all tight together. Basically you get good performance out of it and it'll open up. You can see it starting to open now. There's a little crack right there that you can see some light through. Let me show you with a flashlight here. You can see the light through the thermostat. As this cools down, that's going to close off, and then there won't be any coolant flow through it, and there won't be any light passing through. So this is a great design. This updated design is wonderful. On the older ones, however, like on the old 90s or even up to 2003, 2004, when they're mounted in the bottom like this, air goes to the top and it collects around that spring and essentially causes the spring to not get hot enough. If that spring doesn't get hot enough, you don't get the opening like this. Air dissipates the heat pretty quick basically. So what do you do with a situation like that, and where's the air coming from? That's an awesome question. Let me tell you, the air's coming from a blown head gasket, or the system's been opened, like you changed a water pump or a hose or something and air got introduced in and is trapped down there. It gets trapped because it can't get around the little bubbler when you have it in the down facing position. If by some crazy happenstance, once this is open, you get good flow through and the air will purge out just fine. So what you do is you put that bucket in place, basically spill-free funnels, one name for it. I call it a radiator bucket. But you put that on there and get it to go through. Now if you have a blown head gasket and air's being constantly introduced into the system from the back side and coming in from the engine block side, then that air is just going to be continuously channeled that way, and you're going to be screwed. So what I would do is fix it right. Replace a head gasket. What if you can't do that? What if you don't have the funds? Then there's another plan that we can do. So I'll take a marker and I'll mark this thermostat. I'll grab it with pliers. It's a little bit on the warm side. Boy, when it warmed up and opened up, it really warmed up and opened up. That's because the heat travels through the spring. I only heated it on one side and it was all lopsided. But once that heat had a chance to be conducted through the metal, you can see that it's really open. So here's what we do. You got your air bubbler, and this thermostat looks a little different. They got a little bit more room for the air bubbler. But say for the example with this one, I would drill a hole here, here. This is assuming that you don't have the money to fix it right, like you should. And here. The other ones, basically I would do one here, here, and here, you know, if it's spaced out on the ones that we're talking about. This one's newer, so it doesn't really work for this. But I'll show you about the size hole I would put in that. And all the holes do is they allow the antifreeze to pass through, but what that does is that makes it as though your thermostat's a little bit open all the time, which is great for purging air, which is great for purging combustion gases, CO2 from the vehicle, leaking a head gasket, whatever, but it makes it so that the vehicle's at least usable. I mean, say you don't have to save up money, you have to get to work to save the money, you get the idea. If you don't, I mean, obviously you do the head gasket, and I've got a lot of videos on that. I'll see if I can put some of the links to those in the description, but I'll show you a little shortcut if you're short on cash or can't do the head for a while to kind of get you by. So let's drill some holes in this. Just to share with the folks at home what I'm doing, I've got a drill press. I take a little 2x4 block like this, I hang this over the side, and I'm just punching it with a small drill bit. But mark it before you put the gasket off, or else your gasket's going to block the hole, and then you don't do any good to drill it. So take the thermostat, line it up on the block, just give it a little squeeze. You don't want a big hole because the more coolant that passes, the longer it's going to take for your car to heat up and run efficiently, for one. Watch for that, that can be alarming. It's going to take longer to heat up and run, and then it's also going to have poorer heater performance. When your car's warmed up, it runs better, it's more efficient. But anyway, just putting in a couple of holes, 3 holes in it like that. Like I say, on the ones where it's in the center and they're mounted upside down that you have a problem with this, you just do them, you know, 1, 2, 3, you know, like the arms on a, you know, like a Mercedes-Benz symbol or something. So fancy, you got a leaky head gasket and a jerry-rigged thermostat. So anyway, that's how you get around that problem. I just thought I'd post this. People have been asking about it and needed to get a video up about it. It's Wednesday, and that's what I want to do.